This is Daniel Montero, GW Smoke Break, and I'd like to welcome you to Emerald Mountain Legacy Summer 2020. We're going to discover the legend of Mandelbrot and the impact that he had in the Emerald Triangle and around the world for that matter. We'll be talking to pioneers and legends like Kevin Jodrey, Tim Blake, Joel Itao Foundation, and Mean Gene from Mendocino. Join us on this genuine California cannabis experience, and you already know, culture is king. Peace.
He had a fucking huge network, man. Mack had a lot of fucking people tied into him. He knew people everywhere. So he was most definitely well fucking known. The kid was obsessed with weed. Obsessed. And I mean, and I'm someone who's obsessed with fucking weed. So like, you can tell. And it was just, it's really nice to see that in a craft where you're that bold and you believe so strongly that you're willing to chase your fucking direction and desire. And I think that that's what has to stand out, because otherwise it's a breeder that he bred a plant, and it's like, yeah, you know, you bred a plant. But what he did was he changed a region by introducing better genetics to the cultivators. He changed a region by producing plants that worked well in coastal, because all this coastal strip sucks to grow a lot of the varieties that were highly marketable. They just fucking did not like it. The Perp didn't like it because it molds. The Kushes get PM, and this one has both in it and doesn't do fucking either. So two of the biggest combinations of success in cannabis in the last 40 fucking years living in this plant. So it's holding some really, really powerful connections to the public already. They've consumed the parents intensely. So they're not going to suddenly switch out of it. And so this is stuff like OG goes 40 years, the Royal can be here for the next 25, 30 years, because it has a better flavor. Like the Mack is gorgeous, and I think that he created something that was unique, but a joint of the Mack is a better taste than a joint of the Royal. The Royal paints your mouth.
The first generation of Royal was made in like 2004.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so that was in the Arcata warehouse I mentioned. We had messed around with the parents a little bit in Albion, but we made Royal at the Arcata warehouse. And then it's funny because we started growing it back in Albion again and all over the place. My brother would do these huge, like 3,000 plant sifts. You know, you just grow in 1 gallon pots, grow as many of them as he could so he could explore that genetic variation.
Like I said, he wasn't afraid of saying what he do. You know, he was out there just growing herbs and selling seed and just hustling like it was 2020, but it was 2005, you know? So yeah, no, I respect him for that, like never shy away from who he was, you know, like that was big. That's inspirational to enough people to just, you know, say who you are. That's important, like.
And now you're
that's why we're talking about him today, because yeah, you know, he was out there, he was a wild man, so appreciate that about him, you know, like I said, no fear. You know, that's big.
It's interesting. You talk about the genetic breeders from around the world, they'll tell you that all the Europeans come to Northern California. Kevin will tell you that, they'll all tell you. They all come here because the best genetics are in the world. Well, when John Vergados, who was Skunk Magazine, the publisher of Skunk Magazine, he came out here because he's one of the leading genetic dealers in the world, and he wanted to talk to all the OG genetic people. There were very few that would step up or come talk to us or even get in a room with us because there just wasn't that many of them. People weren't really dedicated to that. The few that were, like Ringo Lawrence, you look at Mandelbrot, and a few others, they came, and Todd McCormick, and they came in and brought the base of all these cultivars that everybody used to make all these amazing strains. You look at everything now, my God, there's so many strains, wedding cake, cookie cake, 15 gelatos. It all came from all this material, from those land races and all that work that Mandelbrot did. And like I said, I mean, he really deserves way more credit than he'll ever get because he just wasn't a loud, outspoken person, and he didn't demand it. But if you go back to Leo or any of these guys, they'll tell you that you know, he was the guy. For a while there, I thought we were going to be sitting on just fuels, and there was going to be no genetic diversity, and I thought we were going to be just smoking OG the rest of our lives at one point. And that changed so quickly. Really, the big first change was when they run with that Royal Kush with Leo, an aficionado, which was Brat's, cultivar. And once that crossed over, then it became everybody wanted to get their own strain. And you saw that come in with the cookies, you saw the Skittles come in.
Mandelbrot's work, what's trippy about it is that I think the first time I heard a Royal Kush was on TV. And it was like one of the early shows that had been on the news about dispensaries, or it might have been like the one about like Weed Wars about Harborside or something.
Really?
Yeah, and I saw they were like, oh yeah, well we got this stuff, it's called Royal Kush, we're gonna test it right here, we want to know, how much THC it has. See right there, it's like 24% or 27% or something THC. They go, see, that's good, that means this is potent. And it turned out that people like that I go way back with in Woodman Canyon and in Spy Rock, they already before that for a few years had already kind of converted over to growing Royal Kush. But what was trippy was all these people who had converted to it, they didn't know who Mandelbrot was. They just knew they had got the plants, they grew them, and they were really good, and they were willing to convert to just growing Royal from all their old stuff that they had back in the day because it was so dependable, and then the weed was so dank.
We just figured out early on that you'll produce a better, more terpene-rich product near the coast where it's more humid and where you have more cooler nights and more variation in temperature, and that humidity would create a better quality product. And we figured that out, and then we're like, so we need to figure out how to breed stuff that will do well in these wetter climates, and worked from there. It was like a bonanza of every property was selling for top dollar immediately, because of how profitable cannabis was back then. It was difficult to find a place, and so I think it was more driven by like wanting to be in a certain area, but not necessarily a certain property, and just taking what you can get, really. About 20 miles as the crow flies from the ocean, on Kamsha Ukiah Road, in between Mendocino and Ukiah. We're 2 miles down a private road, and none of our neighbors can see anything on our property, so that was a consideration for sure.
Yeah, I feel blessed to be here, be part of the process, and from a young age, I've been involved in cannabis somewhat, one way or another, and it's beautiful to come out here and see things come full circle, and just the process of life, and with death there's life, and it's great to be here.
What was it like growing up with two older brothers, dude?
Yeah, well, so we have a pretty good age gap. I think Ben's 9 years older than I, and Mandelbrot was, I think 5 years older than Ben, and so there was a age gap. Both of these guys were kind of like in and out of the house a lot when I was growing up, and by the time I was kind of age to be cognitive and running around and stuff, these guys kind of moved out of the house, as adults do, and came out here to California. And so when I graduated high school in 2010, I moved out here, followed suit, and got a place with Ben, and the rest is history. County to county, whether you're in Trinity County out in the Pines, or if you're up in Humboldt, in northern Humboldt, or down here in Mendo, they're all similar vibes, and it seems like everybody is kind of on the same page, really. It seems like we are a pretty unique ecosystem and climate out here in the Emerald Triangle, and it's not a lot of places like this. Even if you go up to Southern Oregon, it's different. I don't know how to really put it down, but the vibe is just different. It's community, and the people out here were born on cannabis, and not formed around it. They were formed through it. You know what I mean?